Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this NLP workshop that we're working with Judy Bartkowiak, who's doing NLP, parenting the NLP way. It's lovely to see you all. If you have the opportunity to put your videos on, please do so. I know that some people may be at work or in a situation where they're not able to put their videos on. We'd really love to see your faces if that's possible. Just a couple of things to mention before we start. Firstly, thank you, Judy, for giving this talk, Parenting the NLP Way. We've just been discussing, because there are a few of us here, it gives it the impression of being very personal and intimate, which it is. Of course, Judy will be talking about things to do with children and your personal experiences. So if you are going to share during this with questions, please be aware that this will be recorded and put up on our YouTube channel. So if there are things that you'd like to take up with Judy separately or afterwards, please let Judy know. I think Judy's okay with doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And be aware that if you are sharing, that it will be shared on our YouTube channel as well. So that's just to be aware of. And without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Judy to start the workshop. Thank you, Judy.
Okay. Right. Hello. Welcome to everyone. And whoops, there's all sorts of things coming up all over the screen. But hopefully you can see me, you can see the screen. You don't really need to see the screen. And at some point I might actually ask Cash to minimize the screen or do something with the viewing if I can't do it. Because the only reason that I've got the screen there is just to keep me on track, because once I'm actually talking about parenting and NLP, I do tend to go a bit sort of mad and so on. So I have also said it's great if you take yourselves off mute, because I run webinars that are very interactive. So if there's something that you either think doesn't make sense, doesn't apply to you, or you've got children of a particularly different age or whatever, that you'd like to know, well, what would you recommend for that age? Please say. Also, I'm not going to look at the chat. So if you do have a question, just ask me, okay? No need to put your hands up, just butt in, because we're quite a small group and that's fine. So, everybody okay? Any questions? No? Good, 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 good. Can I say bonjour to Jean-Pierre? Just to show off, I can speak French. Right, okay, so
Hello.
hello, okay. So when we think about parenting, I find it so important that 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 we think about what do we want? What is our compelling outcome? I was saying to Cash just before the session that if you don't come up with any questions, I can just bombard you with the sort of questions I get asked by parents. And quite often they're saying things like, how do I stop my child waking me up at night? How do I stop my child doing this? How do I get my child to stop doing that? Or my child is always late for school. And they're focusing on the one thing. I can see Jill nodding away. Yeah, and they're thinking about what they don't want. And I just think this is why I do what I do, is because sometimes it just takes one little nugget, one little word, one little way of changing what you do to get a different outcome. And this is what I noticed many years ago now when I trained with Sue Knight. I knew her actually personally, locally. She was actually at my church. And she invited me to go to see how I go off beam. You're gonna might have to sort of tell me off, Cash. But she said, come along to this introduction to NLP. And I thought, what? NLP? Isn't that all about, sales, motivating people to make sales? Anyway, I felt I had to go. And it was so obvious how incredibly important actually making a sale is for parents. We have to sell them on brushing their teeth, going to bed, doing their homework, brushing their hair. We have to sell them on things they totally don't want to do. We're calling them for supper. They want to play. Of course, they want to play. You know, we were children once. Why on earth would one want to go and eat when you're in the middle of making a Lego model? So, thinking about what you do want and being able to imagine it is so important. And I use the eye accessing. I use lots of other things. If I'm doing a webinar or something like this, what I would do would be to get parents to close their eyes. I say parents, Jean-Pierre, it's lovely to see you here, but mostly I just work with mums, because dads are sort of, I don't know, they're the sort of the fun play ones, aren't they? It's the mums that have to end up disciplining usually, although gross generalization, I know. And so I get mums to close their eyes and say, imagine, the miracle dream exercise. So you get them to close their eyes and say, imagine you go to bed and in the night a miracle happens. And when you wake up in the morning, everything is going to be exactly as you'd really like it to be. And so when they open their eyes and sort of say, I say, well, so what's different? They say, well, they're not arguing, they're not fighting, they're not doing that. See what I mean? They're thinking about what's not. So I say, well, okay, so I hear you, but what would you like? And then you get, well, I'd like quiet. I'd like them to be doing what they're doing. And so, whatever method you use with your own children, you need to make that switch to what do you want. So, eye accessing is a really good way, and I use that with children a lot. And so we sort of focus the present is straight ahead, right? The past is left and the future is right. Normally, I know that, sometimes it can be different and you're going to test it out with your own kids. So then you would look up and say, what I'd like to see, what I'm going to see is this. I'm going to hear this and I'm going to feel that. So eye accessing is a really, really quick way to do it. And it's a quick way for your children as well. So if they're saying, I don't want to go to school. I mean, I have that so often. If they're saying I don't want to go to school, well, okay, look up and see what will you see when you're having a good time at school? Oh, I'll be playing with my friends in the playground. I'll be, whatever. Then I'll be hearing the teacher say, oh, it's a really good piece of work, whoever, and then I'll be feeling great. So using the eye accessing is just one of those really super little NLP. Do you use that? Do take yourselves off mute. Talk to me. Do you use the eye accessing with your kids?
I've not used it in that way with people, so that's really interesting to do, to actually physically get them to
Mm.
move the eyes as you're getting them to see, hear, and feel.
Yes, I get them to
So yeah.
use their arms as well because
Mm,
obviously I'm very auditory kinesthetic, as you can see, and kids sort of like to sort of I'm looking up there and
mm,
etc. so that they can see exactly.
mm.
Obviously on the screen it looks like the opposite way, which is very confusing. But yes, it's quick. Anybody else? You're on mute. Talk to me.
Yeah, hi Judy. I use them, Lucy here. I use it for the accessing cues, particularly for spelling and for literacy and numeracy, things like that. So it's great to see a slightly different slant. Doing what you're doing, I get children to move or their parent to move into how they would like it to be. And we do lots of opposites.
Mm,
So, and I often say it the way you want it or think it the way you
yeah,
want it.
yeah,
But I'm
yeah.
going to add in that little extra, look at it the way you want it or imagine it, future pace it.
Do you
So
work in a
yeah, I'm
school,
a bit
Lucy?
hands-on.
Do you work in a school?
And I used to work not full-time anymore, but I do blocks of work in schools and on a one-to-one and small groups.
Because that works so well. If they say they want to get, say, a better grade or whatever, I then say, okay, look up. What number do you see? And so it'd
Mm,
be like sort of 70. Okay, 70. What does that look like? What color is it? How is it written? Can you write it up there?
yeah.
70.
Mm.
And is there anything else written there? Oh, yes, my teacher's written, well done, Joe, or whatever. Great, okay. And then what will you hear? I'll hear my parents saying, oh, well done, that's really good. And what else? Or I'll hear my friends go, what did you get? You got 70. Wow. And then what will I feel? I'll feel really great. Where will you feel that in your body? That, great feeling. Where will you feel that? What color is it? Let's bring it on. dial up the color, dial up the feeling, dial it up. And it really works because they're associating into the future. I mean, it's called future pacing, mental rehearsal, call it what you like, but it's a really, really simple technique to blast all over the place with your own children, and also, of course, with yourself. When I'm training, I say to students, okay, how many clients are you going to have next week or that week? Oh, I don't know. Give it a number. Have a look. Have a look at your diary. How many have you got? What's the number on your bank balance? What's the number on your statement? How much have you earned this month? What are you going to hear? I'm going to hear parents saying, oh, wow, the difference you've made with my child. And then what are you going to feel? I'm going to feel really good. So use it for yourself, use it for everyone. Super, super technique. I just cannot believe, I don't know whether it's Bandler and Grinder who actually came up with the eye accessing, but I just can't believe that two young lads, too young, can you get this? That two young lads, programmers, came up with something that's making such a difference in the world of parenting. I mean, how did they know that it could be useful in parenting? Anyway, I think I probably need to go back to my slide to keep on track. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. And I've got a yoga class at 4, so I can't be here all day. So how do I go back to share? Oh, flip. That wasn't quite what I intended there. As you can see, I can't be trusted with slides. Right. So yeah, it's also good to use an anchor. I don't use an anchor particularly in the conventional way, as you can probably imagine. Say if they've seen this number, or they've talked about what things are going to be like, and I know that maybe as they've associated into it, maybe the visual was more prominent. So I might say, what's it feel like to be with your friends in the playground? And they go, it's great. And I say, okay, that action that you've just done, can we use that in some way to anchor that feeling? So I know that, the boring way of anchoring is, we don't do that with kids because kids are imaginative. They're exciting, magical human beings. And so use an anchor, let them choose what anchor they want, and they can use it however they want. But I would say that it may not be the conventional way. They might have a funny word that they might use, or an action, or whatever. So we'll leave you with anchoring. So modeling. Any questions, by the way, about that? Just butt in, please do. So one of the beliefs of excellence that I think is fundamental to working with children is that they already have all the resources they need. Children are imaginative, they're curious, they love trying new things, not going to new places necessarily, but you can, something new to learn, something that and they're so excited by it. I remember once I was doing some work with this 12-year-old boy, and he was somebody who was told he had no focus. He came in, plonked himself down and said, I'm autistic, don't you? And I said, well, I'm Judy, hi. And he said, I can't concentrate. Do you know, he was concentrating so well. And we were doing stuff on the meta programs, and he was process, not too surprising, I guess. So he said every day, a nice little generalization there, every day his mum asks him what he wants for supper. And he finds that really annoying. He says, I don't know why she asked. I don't know what's in the fridge. I can't cook. Why doesn't she just give me what is in the fridge and I'll eat it? And so I said, well, have you said anything? And he said that his mum says it's important for him to be able to make decisions, and that it's part of his autism that gives him this problem that he can't make decisions. And I said, actually, who's this a problem for? Mum. Okay, so what are we going to do about it? So anyway, we went to the gate. Mum had picked him up, and he said, you mustn't ask me anymore what I want for tea because I'm process. I'm not choices. So, and he just loved the fact that he had this information that she didn't have. So she said, oh, right, okay. So, yes, we already have the resources. They have the resources. We have the resource to copy from others instead of looking at other kids in the class or friends that you think are better than you, more popular than you, more cool than you, richer than you, or whatever. Instead, actually learn from what their belief is. You know, it's the modeling technique. How are they doing what they're doing? And particularly for parents. I remember one mum coming to me for her. I'm not looking at the chat, by the way, as I see there's a one there, but if that was you, just tell me in the session. I had this mum coming to me and she said, I have such problems with my kids, my two boys. They're always fighting. This always generalization. I'll come to that anyway. And she said, from the moment I get in, and I said, when are you starting to think about it? And she said, well, as I'm leaving the office and getting in the car, I'm already dreading going home because they're going to be fighting. So I said, well, that's a good way of setting it up, isn't it? What would it be like if this is why we started with compelling outcomes? So what if you thought differently? What if you sort of thought, well, I'm really looking forward to seeing my boys and finding out about their day. Oh, no, she said, and we never get to that. They're always fighting. So I said, well, what do you do for work? She's in HR. So I said, if you have a couple of client colleagues who are fighting, who are sort of arguing in the or not getting on, there's conflict, what do you do? And she said, well, that happened the other day, actually. She said, I was in a meeting and in the background I could hear two of my staff or two of my employees, and they were having quite a raised voice sort of exchange. And I said, oh, what did you do? And she said, well, I went over to them and I said, well, could you just act it out for me? So she sort of got on. She said, and she went over to them and she said, everything okay? And then she said, right, so we call that a belief of excellence. We believe that worked. So that is how it's done. That is how you can do it. And she said, well, it wouldn't work at home. And I said, what if you were to try it? Anyway, she emailed me the next day, actually, and she said, you'll never guess. They turned around, they stopped fighting, and they looked at me like I was a complete alien, but they did stop. And this is the thing, isn't it? Be curious, and children, as I said, are hugely curious. Be curious. Where does it work for me? Where am I good at this? And for a lot of parents, it is in their work life. I don't know whether you guys find that. Do you? That, you can achieve stuff in your work life that you can't achieve with your kids. I mean, part of that is the sort of emotional thing, isn't it? Because we are involved with them emotionally. And so when they sort of kick off, we make it a bit all about ourselves, don't we? I mean, it's a bit like the old drama triangle. We go into victim. Oh, I'm so useless. Why are they having a go at me? I'm useless. And then you go into sort of persecutor, sort of say, will you stop doing, whatever. Whereas actually, if you step away and that was the first thing I think I took away from Sue Knight's training, this disassociation thing, because as a parent, we're so associated. But actually step away for a moment. Imagine you're that third person looking down and sort of, basically you've got a mum and a daughter screaming at each other. And you sort of think, oh, yes, I remember doing that as a child myself. And then you realize, actually, this is all perfectly normal. It doesn't mean that you're a rubbish mum, even if they've just as minded at the time. My eldest was about 14, 15. And she said, oh, you're the worst mother in the world. I can't wait to leave home. None of my friends' parents are like you, and all of this stuff now. And so I'm going on about the resources and so on, because I think it's really important. I think it's all really important. I mean, that's why I'm here, really, to share with you all these really important things that we already know that we can use. The person with the most flexibility controls the system. Yeah, flexibility, do it another way. Try different words, try a different tone, try a different place. Any of you who've got teens will know that if you offer to take your teen somewhere and give them a lift, sitting in the car facing forwards yeah, Lucy, you've got that one, yeah. Facing forward, you can say what you flipping well like, because they're trapped, which is good, and there's no eye contact. I mean, I sit, and this is actually my therapy room, and we sit either facing the window, then have the windows open and so on. I would have them open today, but I'm afraid the traffic noise will be a bit unpleasant. And the dog might come in. So facing that way rather than facing this way, I've heard so many reports from, I get a lot of clients who have been sent to CAMS and they absolutely hate it. And they say it's basically face-to-face, direct questioning, asking the why question. I mean, you all know clean language, don't you? We use clean language. We wouldn't use a why question. It's pointless. They don't know why. That's left brain stuff. They don't know why. If they knew why, they wouldn't be doing it, would they? And yet parents ask why all the time. So instead, it's like, oh, how do you do that? That's really amazing. How do you do that? Or whatever. So back to flexibility. Yeah, there are different ways of doing things. And you can even ask your child. So say, in fact, I think that's a really good thing to do, to be able to say, look, we do have to, the truth is that we do actually have to get to school. We have, you have to get on the school bus, or we have to get to school. I have to get to work. What would be the best way that I could wake you up? And the thing is that parents don't do that. Sometimes all I've done is like one session with a child and they've said, if only my dad would take off his really noisy smartphone, because it wakes me up. He has an alarm on, or I can hear it in the next room. If only my mum didn't shout when she wakes me up. If only this. Why don't they say? But then do parents ask? If you ask, how would you like me to do this? What would be a good way, to do that? Get them to act it out. So I'm just going to have a glass of water. So flexibility. Yeah, I think I've covered that. Think of a time you've communicated well, negotiated a win-win. And it probably would be at work, but it could be with a friend. It could be with your partner, possibly less than. I'm not sure how win-wins with partners. It doesn't always work out like that, does it? But what's your structure? What's your underlying belief? How could you apply this model? You could anchor the state. That's quite a good one. And, if say you were thinking about sort of work, imagine yourself in your work clothes with your work persona. I mean, how we are at work is quite different, isn't it, from how we are at home? And yet we are the same, we are actually ourselves, but we're taking a different persona in that sense. Generalizing, deleting, distorting. Well, yes, of course, we all do it. We all do it. And that is a generalization. So catch yourself doing it, and find the exceptions. And actually, it's the exceptions, as you know, it's the exceptions where you learn. So when you think about, so when does it work? I remember a mum, actually, she was telling me, it's sort of quite a sad situation. She's quite short, not sad that she's short, I hasten to add, but she was short, but her boys were really tall. And it was an Asian family where a mother has to respect the boys because they're boys rather than anything else. And they were bullying her, telling her what to buy, what food to get in. They were coming back from school, sort of saying, you haven't got any pizzas. Yeah, all this sort of stuff. And she was saying she didn't know what to do because she was really worried that their way of being was quite bullying, and she wondered whether this would actually get worse. And she was worried too that they were so much bigger than her that she was actually worried that they could like push her around. And she was a single mother. And of course, her partner, the boy's father, was living with his mother and not supporting her in terms of disciplining the children. And so I said, well, tell me about what you do. And she said, I'm a regional sales manager for something other covering, I don't know, Dorset, about 3 counties. And so I said, well, how do you do that? And she said, well, because they respect me, because I know what I'm doing. And I said, and as a parent, I don't know what I'm doing. So she's already coming from a very weak point, very weak part. This has got absolutely nothing to do with generalizing, deleting, and distorting. But hey, unless Cash tells me off, I'll carry on. So yes, it was about self-belief. But I suppose it is part of that in so much as she was generalizing that she didn't have power, but she does have power in another area of her life. How does she do power? So she did actually use anchoring and sort of how she was at work. I think what she did actually was she used shoes. She said at work I have shoes on, at home I have slippers on. I'm going to keep my shoes on to remind me of my work persona. So that's that. Yeah, so general deleting, obviously deleting context, being very sort of vague isn't very helpful. Feedback is really, really useful for children. The boy I was talking about who said that he was told he didn't have any focus or wasn't able to concentrate. I pointed out to him that you're really focusing really well. You're giving me great eye contact, and your questions are really showing that you're reflecting on what we're talking about. Oh, he said. And he said, nobody's ever told me that. And I think what people are doing, it was just sort of saying, you need to focus, you need to concentrate without actually taking it down to that small chunk level of, well, what actually does that mean? And when it comes to feedback, how I explain it to parents, and obviously how I'm explaining it to you, is that imagine that you have one of those old filing cabinets, and in the filing cabinet are a load of folders, and in each folder is something that you want your child to be good at or to work on. It's important. It's a value, it's a value that they concentrate, or that they're honest and that they're considerate, etc. And you have those folders. And then when they're doing something that you feel is like an example of that, you note it, you mark it out, and you say, you were very kind there when you did this for your sister. And you mentally pop it into that folder in the hope that by your intentionally doing that, they're doing that. You're sort of sending that intention into your sentence, that is going in that filing cabinet with that, so that you hope that when they need that resource, they have all these examples that you've marked out. Now, what parents mostly do is they mark out what they don't want. So children are sitting there being sweet as pie and playing maybe, or doing whatever they're doing. Mum or dad sort of thinks, okay, fine, right, I'm just going to go and make that call. I'm just going to send that message, just going to check my emails. I'm just going to do this, that, or the other, do my online shop. So you've left the children. You have not marked that they've been good. I hate that, but doing something peaceful and calm. You've actually left them at that point. So if you think about sort of, it's the opposite of what they want. They want your attention. So you've actually denied them what they want in those moments that they're actually doing what you think is pretty good. And you think, oh, I'm quite a good parent, really. They're sort of playing nicely there. No, you've gone off to do something else. So then they beat each other up and you come back, don't you? Yeah, is that what you do, Jill? No, not me. But you come back and what's going on here? So they've got your attention, but in a negative way. So it's important to mark out what you do want. I suppose I work loads with children and teens. That's sort of what I'm known for, and I love it. But I do work with mums and also with dads. because they make a huge difference, because what they come into parenting with sometimes can really affect them. And I spoke to a dad once, two boys. I do actually see girls as well, but two boys. And he said, I want you to see my eldest boy because he's really naughty. His behavior is just impossible. So I said, he's always naughty. I said, always? And then he said, yes, always. So I said, well, is he ever, is he ever sort of calm and, peaceful and so on? And, is ever, well, sometimes it can go 3 weeks, I suppose. I said, what? 3 weeks? My goodness, I'd be delighted if I had a boy of 7 who went 3 weeks without needing to be told off. And he said, well, so he said, I suppose it's all, it's quite good, isn't it? I said, yes, it's bloody marvelous, 3 weeks of that. And then so I said, perhaps you'd like to come and see me, because he said, I think I've got a problem, which is really good. I won't say men admitting they have a problem, but and so he came to see me, and what transpired was that when he was about 12, his father said to me, and the hypnotic sort of, embedded command, his father said to him, son, being a parent, it's so hypnotic, isn't it? Being a parent is the hardest thing you'll ever have to do. So from the moment that his wife was pregnant, he was expecting problems. He was looking out for problems. So this is what I'm saying about marking out what's going well, because actually what you're working with, what parents are tending to do, I'm sure none of you are doing it, but a lot of parents, is somebody asking a question?
petrol. ठीक है.
Don't know what's going on there. But as parents, we can find ourselves marking out what we don't want. So distorting as well, making assumptions, assuming that they're just trying to wind you up, assuming that you know what their intention is, assuming that they're going to, I remember my mum saying to me once, and I was a real nerd at school, so she had absolutely no reason to worry, especially as she'd left school at 16. And there was me doing 4 A levels where 3 was sort of considered the norm. But she said, Judith, if you carry on like this, not doing your revision, you will end up working in a supermarket. So I thought, that's a hell of an assumption. And of course, it was completely false. And you lose respect, don't you? Because actually what I was doing was working extremely hard, revising in my room with music playing. And that's why she thought that I wasn't working. But actually, when you're auditory, having music that's your choice enables you to concentrate better. I'm not generalizing, but I would say a lot of auditory children don't want too many noise distractions. I had another one that was complaining because his mum only let him do his homework in the kitchen where she could keep an eye on him, but he couldn't concentrate because she would be prattling away on the phone and clattering pots and pans. So yeah, making assumptions. Oh my God, look at the time. Making assumptions, mind reading. Yes, you've got to watch that. So model the behavior that you want. Show, don't tell. Do what you want them to do. So that would be, if you want them to be able to take feedback well, you would demonstrate how you do that. So you could give feedback to yourself. Or that wasn't very nice the way I said that, was it? That seemed a bit harsh. I'm just going to rewind and say that again. And we can do that, we can actually take back what we want to take back, and also being able to feed back to them and say, "Ooh, that sounded a bit harsh. Do you want to rephrase that?" So give them the opportunity to do that, to think and go, "Oh, right, sorry, Mum. I didn't quite mean it like that. Just had a bad day at school, or the teacher was a bit mean, or got told off for something." So demonstrate how you want things to be. Demonstrate sort of calmness and breathing, demonstrate all the things that you want from them, demonstrate how things can be hard sometimes and how you've had to overcome it. Share your own experiences of how you've managed a particular situation. And reflect on how you do what it is they're doing. If you spot it, you've got it. And that can happen so often, can't it? They're doing something, they're mad about something, but then if you think, what is it they're mad about? It's actually because a lot of kids don't like you going to their bedrooms. It's their space. Their map of the world is incredibly small. The map is not the territory for them. Their bedroom is their space, and they don't want you in it after a certain age, and they don't want their siblings in it either, but maybe you don't want locks on doors and things like that. But for them, that's a territory invasion, and that can be really uncomfortable. And so we have to think, okay, fine. So that's, how would I respond to a territory invasion? Well, I mean, there are lots of ways we might respond to a territory invasion. We might be furious. Some people would get a territory invasion sense if somebody pushed in front of them in the queue at the supermarket or something, or took your place wherever. So think about how you can help them, and so on there. Hypnotic embedded commands. Oh, I love this one. Don't. Oh, don't you? We hear that so often, don't we? Do you get that? Do any of you find yourself using the don'ts? Don't tell me. God, I'm very quiet. My mum webinars aren't this quiet. They're usually all talking.
I tell mine, don't say don't.
Oh yeah, don't say don't. Yeah.
You'll get exactly what you expect.
Yes. Oops, there we go. Yes, so the don't word is something that don't forget your pencil case. Don't forget your reading folder. Don't forget your PE kit. What are they going to do? They're going to forget them.
Don't dump your bag on the floor.
Yeah, that's right. Don't drop your bag on the floor, but instead sort of tell them what you do want, which is back to the beginning again, really, in terms of compelling outcomes. Focus on what you do want. I had a mum, this is a girl story, and she came to me because she said, my daughter keeps coming into our bed at night. And her daughter, so what happened was, because the daughter was sort of like spread eagled on the bed, the mum had to get out of the bed, went to her daughter's bed, and the daughter was in like a junior bed. So her legs were sort of hanging over the edge and she couldn't sleep. And she said, oh, then I end up going on the floor and I'm so tired all day and I'm really worried about driving her to school because, I'm so sleepy. So I said, well, what do you say to her? She said, well, I say, don't come into my room. And yeah, seems obvious, doesn't it, Jill? Yeah, don't come into my room. So don't come into my room.
Invitation.
You sorry?
It's an open invitation.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, got to do that. Got to go in there, which is exactly what she did. So then I said, well, what do you want her to do? And so she said, well, I don't want her to come into my room. So I thought, oh dear, we're not getting anywhere here. So I said, I sort of did it a bit more sort of hypnotic embedded command. Say, what do you want? I was talking to a child. And then she was getting really annoyed and she said, well, I don't want her to come into my room. So I said, I hear you. I know you don't want to do, but what do you want her? And when she sort of stopped and it was like, oh, I've never even thought about that. So she said, well, I want her to stay in her room. And so I said, well, have you ever told her that? No. So again, it's it's a lovely one, really, isn't it? I don't know whether this is like the difference between, I don't know, what we do as coaches and what counselors do. I don't really know enough about the different labels that people put. But when you notice the patterns as we do as NLPers, it's flipping obvious, isn't it? It's like, can't you see that? You focus instead on what you do want. So again, yeah, she messaged the next day and said, do you know, she stayed in her room. I think, Of course she bloody did, because she's been told what to do. And so, yeah, so there we go with that one. I think I might need to, how do I go back? Can you put me back to the slides? Thanks, Cash. It's amazing to have. There we go. Oh, there we go. Nope, that's not what, do I need to share again, don't I?
You need to share again, yes.
Yeah, that's okay. Right, okay. So yes, so the don't word is very important. Tell them what they do want. I love the I'm wondering. I used to use that so much for my kids. They tease me about it now, but I loved that one. So I've got 4 kids, like Cash and Karen, and they had the sort of all of them. We didn't do homework in the evenings. They were way too tired. They were a sporty family, and they had practices after school. They just needed to come back, eat, and relax. So we used to do homework over breakfast. So I just did like sort of chuck it all on the table, help themselves and so on. But if they were being a bit sort of slapdash and not really doing anything about doing their homework and chatting too much, I'd say, I'm wondering how you'll feel when you've put that homework in your bag ready for school. Yeah. And that worked a treat. But obviously, after a while, they look at you and go, yeah, I'm wondering too, Mum. I'm wondering, and of course we can use that with the choices and the process. The choices child who doesn't want to go to bed. I'm wondering what book we're going to be reading when we're getting ready for, when you've done your bath or whatever. So I'm wondering, and use that together with, and giving them that imagined choice. I'm wondering which you're going to do first. Whether you're going to brush your teeth. I'm wondering whether you're going to brush your teeth in the shower, in the bath, standing on the scales. I do put quite a lot of humor in what I do because, I don't know, it makes life more fun, doesn't it, really? I mean, why would one want to take, anything too seriously, really? Because, children are much more entertained by you delivering it in a fun way. So the hypnotic embedded commands you can have great fun with. I'm wondering how quickly you can get up those stairs. I'm wondering whether you can beat last night's time. I'm wondering if you can do it 2 steps at a time. I'm wondering, et cetera, so all of those sort of things make life fun. I used to put little notes and things like that out for my kids as well, and they don't put their dishes in the dishwasher. So, as I said, we used to have sort of breakfast on the big table, and then, I expected them to put their dishes in the dishwasher. So when they don't, I put little sort of markers on the floor, like A4 sheets of paper with arrows on, dishes this way, and think they're far more likely to do it if you make it fun. And also boys and aiming, they can aim a football at a net, but can they aim their Wii into a toilet? At a certain age, it just does not go there. So again, a little arrow and a sort of, or a little poem or something funny there. Less is more. Yeah, use clean language. Are you all familiar with clean language? I'm sure you are. Yeah. And so rather than making an assumption, you then would use and what happened before, what happened next, and that's like what? Tell me more. That's interesting. And the questioning look works really, really well. Managing stress. So a lot of children are very stressed about school. We've got something very, very wrong in the whole schooling system at the moment, but I won't go down that political rabbit hole. But they find I use vision boards, art, Lego modeling. Oh, I should have kept it out. I had a wonderful Lego model of somebody's happiness machine out yesterday. Yes, use other things. Use play and art in order to help them to de-stress. I particularly love, and this is so easy to do. Actually, I go to framing shops, and with like say the border around there, say like on that picture, the middle bit that's cut out is waste. If you go to a framing place, you can get a bag of those if you arrange it, quite apart from obviously paper, but that's a bit more special because they feel like they're actually doing like a proper picture. And just get some acrylics and just get them to just splurge on there. How do you know? You look like you've had a really bad day. Should we get the paints out? Just paints. And some of you might have grandchildren. I know I do, and I know Cash does. I expect some of you do. You have, Jill? Yeah. Expressive art works so well. Also things like the air dry clay, get them to, and also of course, while they're doing that, as long as you do not have your phone on. As for this bloody phone business, I have so many children telling me that their parents are on the phones all the time, and we're all making such a fuss about kids and their phones. And yesterday we went to see that new film, the Jurassic Park, the rebirth thing. And there was a mum and dad and their small child. The dad was on his phone. This was an outing with the child to watch a children's film. He was on his phone. I mean, quite apart from that, he shouldn't have been on the phone. But who does that? Anyway, but while you're sitting there with them, you've got that side by side situation where you can chat. I've got a grandchild, Daisy, who's going to be 8. She lives in Australia. They were over at Christmas there, but they're moving back here, which is going to be so exciting. But we spent a lot of time just in my therapy room, painting and creating and things like that. And while we were doing that, she was telling me about her friends and school and stuff like that. And you can chat in a really easy way. I know it's absolutely nothing to do with NLP, but sorry. Yes, or also music, singing, storytelling, anything like that. Walking. I don't know whether any of you sort of walk with your children or your grandchildren, again, side by side. You've got nature and you've got metaphors all over the place, haven't you? You've got like a trunk with ivy climbing up it. Do you ever feel like you've got sort of like, that sort of ivy climbing around you and a bit sort of, look at that lovely canopy's got food on the brain, canopy with the sort of the trees and the sunshine shining through. What is that? That feels like what, so anything like that. Humming, stroking, I believe one of you sort of havening sort of technique use. That's a lovely one. Hugs as well, and stroking. Humming as well is all good. Giving feedback. It looks like GM, doesn't it? Assume a positive feedback when delivering. Sorry, assume a positive intention when delivering feedback. You're wanting to help, and it needs to be delivered with fun and love as a gift, really. I was just trying to sort out how I was, while we were away on holiday last week, my son seems to have emptied the loft of all his sort of army kit, and it seems to be in my bathroom. And I am trying to work out quite what sort of how I'm going to give him feedback. I might set it up as an obstacle course and say, oh, I've just set it up as an obstacle course. You might like to have a go on your way to the loft. Yeah, it should be given after the event, as soon as you can afterwards, delivered with love. I mean, your children need your love. Your grandchildren need your love. That's all they want. The love languages, they don't want acts of service. We give them acts of service, oh, I've made you this, I've done. Takeaway and lots of love and cuddles on the sofa is really what they want. So yes, not everything matters. Obviously, pick your battles. I say delegate, dump, or do. Decide what you and your family values are, which is back to that filing cabinet and the drawers. What are your family values? Is it keeping the lounge tidy? Is it putting away all the toys? Are those really your values? Or are your values making sure that your children are happy and that they look back on these years with love and happy memories? They're not going to look back and say, well, at least the lounge was always tidy, or at least I always had a healthy meal. No, it's about fun and love, really. Yeah, decide what. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So do something different. I mean, that's pretty obvious, isn't it? I think we're probably, yeah. Next steps. Making changes can be scary for kids and also for partners. Partners have, they think they've got it. This is what we do. But if you're wanting to make any changes, then just discuss it with them. I mean, I think you can discuss changes with children of pretty much any age. Maybe not. I've got a newborn granddaughter. Probably wouldn't be discussing them with her, but from 2 or 3. I'm very Montessori. That's very much all my kids were Montessori educated up until school. And it's very much where it's child-led, and it's about curiosity and exploring your environment. And it's about taking responsibility. And, I think, I can't remember what the sort of Maria Montessori quote is, but it's, the sooner you can get them taking responsibility for their own decision making. And that's why this book actually of mine, Empower Your Kids, is based on the drama triangle, which is that, if you step in and rescue them and clear up after them and fix them and speak to their teacher about things and speak to the other child's parent or whatever's going on, when you're fixing things, it may feel good for you, the parent, and in the moment it feels good for the child because mum sorted it out. But what you've done is you've kept your child in victim. The drama triangle, a Cartman drama triangle, you've got rescuer, persecutor, victim. What you actually need to be doing is empowering them and using all the NLP beliefs of excellence to do so, empowering them to step away and take responsibility for their decisions. I mean, one of the great exercises that you can do with your child is to have a waste paper basket. And I usually use tennis balls because I'm a tennis player. I've always got tennis balls around. And I say, depending on how old they are, let's say 9, and a situation has arisen at school and about bullying or whatever. Okay, you've got 9 balls for your age. I want you to think of 9 different ways you can deal with that. And so they say them and put them in, and I write them down. And then I say, right, okay, can you give a score out of 10 for how beneficial each of those will be? So, there'll be something out of 10. Okay, which one are you going to try first? Now, the decision they make, you may think, oh my goodness, good luck with that one. That's not going to work. But, the map is not the territory. We are not that 9-year-old boy. We don't know the class. We don't know the school. We don't know. So I would just let them go ahead and make that choice and see how it goes. So it's about taking responsibility, making their own choices, and that then builds confidence. Because what can happen is that parents step in all the way through primary school. And then, I'm getting it already now as schools breaking up, as parents are saying, oh, help, 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 my child isn't ready for secondary school. And the teachers are all saying, oh, this is a big move. This is all a new thing and everything's going to be different. Oh, that's a really good way of dealing with it, isn't it? And then, and you're going to have to take responsibility for finding your way around the school and, remembering all your stuff and so on. Absolutely freaks them out. But when you start preparing them from when they're really little, to remember to do things and to take responsibility, you're building that confidence. So that and this is what happens where you've got the sort of rescuer, persecutor, victim. You want to help them to actually step away from victim, ideally not go into victim, but then. So that's the end. Oh, that's actually, I'm pretty impressed with myself. That's pretty good timing wise. So that's pretty much it. Thank you for that, Jill. Like a little bit clap. That little QR code takes you to, can we just have the main screen again? Because I just wanted to show you a few things. Just have us back again. Oh, there we go. Hello, everyone. Just wanted to share with you, actually, it's got nothing to do with parenting, but I've just got a copy of this book, came out in 2014. And I've just got the first copies. It's not even available till October. It's just gone up, hasn't it, Cash, I think, in the shop on the NLP. And I'm looking for a few people to review it for me. But it isn't about parenting. I don't mean it's not about parenting. It's not only about parenting. It likes sports, health, life, relationships, etc. So if anybody would be interested, I've got a few review copies if anybody would be kind enough to do that. Other than that, just quickly, oh, thanks, Ada. And then these are books that, is it okay to talk about my books, Cash?
Yeah, of course it is, yes.
Thank you. So this one here is Understanding Children and Teens. It's basically sort of like the book of the course, as it were, in so much as you've got everything in there. You've obviously got NLP, EFT. I haven't mentioned EFT, but I do a lot of EFT. And it's got all of that, but it's also got some of the other stuff that I probably shouldn't be mentioning here, like crystal healing and art and play and Lego modeling and things like that. That book is on my website. It's specifically for coaches, really, rather than muggles. And then empower your kids. Empower your kids is sort of both, which is really how to, the first part is the sort of theory bit, and the second part is actually issues based. So like there's a chapter on dealing with, it's everything really: anger, anxiety, self-esteem, learning struggles, relationships. And it's got techniques for each of those things. And oh, there was something else I was going to show you. Can I share this little trick as well? It's completely not an assumption of my books. You know how kids think of beliefs as facts, like doing something new is scary, making friends is scary, going to it. So what I've got this thing called facts and beliefs. I'd love to share this with you. So I've got, I wrote out a load of fun stuff on these, on the thing, then guillotined it and made it into these sort of things. So we've got things like the parties are fun. My brother or sister always gets me into trouble. My teacher doesn't like me. Boys are annoying. Those sort of things. School is boring. I'm getting them all there. So I put those out, and you can do this with your kids. And I asked them to divide them into 3 piles. First of all, taking out all the facts. And then we talk about why those things are facts. Well, it's because everybody agrees. And you'll find quite often school is boring actually does go in the fact pile, because they can't think of anybody who doesn't think school's boring. And then there's the beliefs. And so then I get them to divide the beliefs into beliefs that help you, resourceful beliefs, and beliefs that get in your way, limiting beliefs. So we go through them, and then we talk about which ones they've had and don't have anymore, and how they got over that, those that they still have, and how they could use the same skills, beliefs of excellence, taking the model of excellence from one and then moving to the other to get over that. So that's a super duper exercise. Also, I don't know whether you know Wendy Wu's My Mood Stars. If you've got any young children, grandchildren perhaps, this is a nice way to introduce them to emotions. So if I've got, say, a 4 or 5-year-old, then what I do is get them to see if they can recognize any faces that they make, sort of like they can take it off. Yes, they do that. When do they do that? And then with the others, and then we can talk about those emotions when they happen, what they can do about them. So that's really quite nice. I've got lots of really cool stuff in here, but we can't do a tour of the therapy room. Oh, what was the other book? That book. Oh, and the other one. These are some actual some freebies, because don't we all love a freebie? This series here, the Engaging NLP series, there are more of them. I'm updating them, and I'm having new covers. So I'm actually giving away old stock. So, oh, you've got it. Oh, lovely. Yeah. So there's so yeah, I mean, you have to pay for postage, I'm afraid. But there's the children's one, and I'm now completing the early years one. So this is the children's one, which is like primary school, obviously. The tweens one, which is those in-between years, so from taking you from that transition from primary to secondary, which is a bloody nightmare. I mean, year 7 is a bugger. because, you know, they're not really properly prepared for it. They absolutely hate it. And I always know that October half term, I'll be seeing loads of kids with that. Teens, which is exam stress, sleep, relationships, all that stuff. Or you're going through the transition, are you, Diane? And parents. So those ones I've got. I haven't got very many copies of teachers left, or that many of children, but I've got quite a few tweens and teens. Yeah, tweens and teens and parents I've got. But yeah, I'm hoping in the next month to have my new updated ones published, which will be NLP and EFT. So these ones I'm really, I'm not really saying decluttering, but I'm just generously sharing with you. So questions, any questions?
Could I just quickly ask you about the anchoring
Yes.
that you said that you don't
Yeah,
do the
it's
traditional for older people? What you said yours is magical and
it's basically
quick.
what they do so in the moment how I introduce it, this is really how I introduce it to clients, so it's more natural really with children, because they're to your own children, because say if they're doing something, let's go for own children because that's really what we're talking about today. So if say one of my children has done a really good piece of homework. It's been a while since homework because mine are sort of 25 to 35, really, the same as Cash's. Well, 25, 24, it's 25 in October, to 37. But of course, so they were doing homework once. But I don't really have a problem with homework, especially as I actually taught them to forge my signature so that I'd never have to sign a homework diary. Lucy's look of shock.
Good one.
Well, I didn't give the homework. What am I signing for? I did say to the teacher, what am I signing for? Check they've done it. Aren't you supposed to know if they've done it? Well, yes, but you know, you need to. No, I'm not going to check 4 kids' homeworks. It's you set it. It's their homework for their education. And oh well, she said, oh well, Mrs. Bartkowiak, we'll make an exception for you, which they didn't. And so when the homework diary wasn't signed the following week, my son got a detention. So I said, I'll just forge it, you know, just sign it. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? What is this bloody education system coming to? Nobody wants homework. I don't know whether you've ever, oh, what's her name? She is it Sarah Montague or something like that? She has a podcast called The Educators, and if you have a read of those, have a look at those rather, and she is investigating education in all the different countries. God, I did say I wouldn't go down this rabbit hole, and I will make it an incredibly short one. But what she found was that in say the Nordic schools, they don't even do an exam till they're 17 or 18. Yeah. And they don't have homework. They go out skiing, walking. They do lots of sports and things like that. Our country is pretty much the only country that has homework and test whatever. I won't be rude because in case somebody picks me up on it. You know, and is testing children when they can barely hold a pencil. It's ridiculous. So yes, sorry, anchoring. So I noticed I talked to them about, you know, the old what's his name, the Pavlov's dogs, and you know how they sort of ring a bell, etc., and that's associated with food. So if you're talking to your own child, you could say, you know how when we feed. My dog's called Zebby, you know, he's telling me what time it is and he's sort of going to his bowl and, you know, he's wanting to eat. That's an association between something that they like and something that they do. So if you can notice when they're doing something well that they like or that they're happy with or whatever, pick something that is associated with it. It could be like when my son comes back from the gym and I say, oh, good sesh. And he goes, yeah, mom. And he puts his shoes in the food shoe space. You see the arrows did work. So he puts his shoes in the shoe rack. And you could actually say if he didn't have a good session at the gym, you could sort of say, well, you know, when you do have a good session at the gym, you tend to put your shoes in the rack. Maybe you could use that to, before you go, to imagine that you're going to have a good one. Because when he doesn't have a good session in the gym, they do sometimes get left on the floor. So yeah, it's a, I'd say anchoring is something that's a very movable feast with your own children, because you need to be observant about what you notice when they're in a good place, and suggest to them that they imagine that they're in a good place. You can use the eye accessing and then anchor something that they do that marks that out. Does that help, Lucy? Can you give me an exact, an actual example from your own child that would perhaps I could?
Well, my children are big kids as well, but I work a lot with very small children, and sometimes for the anchoring, I get them to, even that feeling they have when they have their favorite toy at home,
Yes, and
but
holding it.
they can't
Yeah.
bring it into school, so it's kind of anchoring in those feelings. But I do get them sometimes to find a little point that nobody else can see, so that when you're sitting
Yes.
in school and how does that feel? Well, we'll have done a lot of submodalities and things around it and magic stuff about how it feels, but now you have it invisibly. So even your teddy, though it's at home, because you're 10, you can't bring it in, even though I have my teddy and I can't bring it in, but how to get the same kind of feeling of
Yeah.
comfort
That's
and
a really,
safety
yeah, that's a really good example, Lucy. I do
transferred.
use that because
Yeah.
if they've got pets and you
Mm.
ask what do they, what keeps them, what makes them feel calm,
Yeah.
and they want to stroke their pets. And so I remember one with who had exam stress. And I said, "Oh, what do you do when you're at home?" "I hold my guinea pig." And I said, "So yes, that." Or another one, stroke. She used it again. I think it was exam stress or stress at school. You can't see because I got it. But yes, just stroking your arm, stroking their arm. So yeah, thank you for that, Lucy. It reminds me. Yeah. So anything that they do that's calming. Um, Also, things like hair brushing is quite hypnotic. I'm going to be okay. I had a lot of kids that I work with who have school anxiety, and what I found out was the mum was brushing their hair in the morning. You know where I'm going with this, Jill, yeah? And you do, Ada. Brushing their hair. Now, don't worry. It'll be fine. It won't be, it won't be as bad as you think. And don't worry. I know you're anxious. So that's like that anchoring the thing you
Yeah.
don't want. So
Yeah.
you can actually, and what I did was say to the mum, "Hey, great that you're brushing your child's hair, but could we use these words instead,
Yeah.
please?
Swap
Like
them
it's,
over. Mm.
yeah, it's going to be a great day." Because that is, so anything like that that's really hypnotic is anchoring what you don't want.
Mm.
Any questions? Anything at all? Cash, have you got anything that you'd like to pick up on? Anything I missed out? Any crucial beliefs of excellence that I've missed out? There are so many, aren't there?
I don't think. I think the fact about boys being annoying ought to be picked up on because, as you said, it's a generalisation and a fact, and not all boys are
Exactly.
annoying.
And
And I'm probably one of them who is. So there you go.
No, that's exactly why I do it, because I believe that exercises and activities should be fun. So I deliberately put things in like everybody likes chocolate, or there's a monster under my bed, or girls talk too much, or so they're all huge generalizations, and they're funny generalizations. So it gets them, yes, it's perhaps my own way. I'm not a terribly serious person, and my intention is serious for what I do, but I hold a fun space, and so I want them to be. I want them to come. I don't want them to associate working with their anxiety. I work with some really, really serious cases, and but we still can have a laugh. You know, it's not, I'm not being disrespectful. They have experienced the sort of heavy, intense questioning, and it doesn't work. Whereas they come to me and they do a crystal timeline, they do some art, we have a walk, we do collage or whatever. and they feel there's a release. You know, a lot of it's very, very, yeah, laughter helps fuel the rapport. Absolutely, it does. You want them to want to come, even though, you know, even though it's hard to address the sort of issues that they're addressing. Well, I hope that you found that helpful.
Thank you, Judy.
That's okay.
It's been a brilliant workshop. Thank you for all attending, and we hope to see you again at the next one. Thank you very much indeed, Judy.
Okay, bye then.
Take care. Bye bye.